This is Gemara Yevamos Daf Kof Yod Ches. As we're almost concluding Miseches Yevamos Baruch Hashem, all the learning should bring an incredible schos for Hashem of Chadalei Bas Ardina Rav Shmuel Yisben Yifrei Der Shmuel Ben Tilon Tzaltzim Ches V'Chamas Shiva Sar Blum Bas Mendachai V'Shishim and Mag Shafiu Shechana B'Soich Sha'ar Chayli Yisrael. So yesterday we concluded a Mishnah on the bottom of Kuf Yitayim with Bees that brought us to the top of Kuf Yud Ches. And the Mishnah discussed in another case of a debate in which whether a husband died. And here we were discussing tsaros. If we have two different co-wives and each one has their own take on the story, we've already discussed extensively that a singular aid, an aid echad, is allowed to believe, especially a woman is allowed to give aid about her husband that he died. But what happens if there are two co-wives, each one saying yes and one saying no? On that the Mishnah said, what's the halacha? The one that said he died could get remarried. The one that says not cannot get remarried. So on that din, says the Gemara, Kuf Yud Ches Amud Aleph, second line, Taima D'Amar Le'Meis. We see clearly in the first case of the Mishnah that the only reason the other co-wife cannot get remarried is why? Because she said he did not die. Ha'ishtika tinase, which clearly implies if she doesn't contradict the other age, she keeps quiet. Rachel comes in and Rachel says, my husband died. Leah, the other co-wife, says nothing. What's the obvious implication of the Mishnah? That Tina say Leah, the second co-wife, could indeed get remarried based on what? The Eidus of Rachel. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? Asks the Gemara, one Sarah, one co-wife is not able to give Eidus for the other co-wife. Says the Gemara, you're right. But the reason the Mishnah says the case that it does, there's a special chiddush where the other co-wife says that the husband did not die. Because there's a havamina, there's a thought to say, it's really the husband died. So why does the second co-wife say he did not? As we've seen that co-wives do not like each other. So maybe Leah is saying the husband did not die specifically to get Rachel back. And what? And she'll bring herself down. Let my soul die with the Pelishtim. Even though she herself is going to get messed up, she'd rather do that and mess up the co-wife, Kamra. That would be the Havamina. So says the Gemara, no, Kamash Malan, the Chiddush of the Mishnah is that even in this case, she's not able to get remarried. Again, we would think maybe the second co-wife that says the husband did not die, maybe those words are meaningless. Because maybe it's clear to us that she's just coming to mess up the other co-wife, so maybe we should have listened to her. Kamashlan the Mishnah, we listened to her that she herself cannot get married based on her words. And we continue quoting the Mishnah, that what happens if one co-wife said he died, and another co-wife said that he got killed. Yeah, right. So now we had a machlekes. Rav Meir said, since they're contradicting each other, neither can get married. Rav Yudah and Rav Shimon said, no, because they're both agreeing to one detail. They're both agreeing the husband's no longer. One said died, one said killed. But they both agree ostensibly that the husband is no longer, so he could get married. Says the Gemara of Livigra Meir Bereisha. Why in the first case of the Mishnah where one Sarah said he died and one did not, why doesn't Rameir say because they're contradicting each other, we don't believe them? Amar Rav Elazar Machlekes Shnuya Rav Yudah Rav Shimoni. Says Rav Elazar, it is indeed. In the Reisha, Rameir does indeed argue. The Reisha is going according to the opinion of Rav Yudah and Rav Shimon. Teretz number one of Rav Elazar. Rav Yochanan argues and he says, no, Afilu Tamer Rameir. Says Rav Yochanan, really the first case could fit with Rameir. He doesn't argue in the first case when each co-wife argues whether he's dead or not. Because Baha Afilu Rameir Maida. The Chol Loi Meis Be'edas Isha. Because any time one says he did not die when it comes to singular witness giving testimony, Lav achashahi is not considered achasha, is not considered a contradiction, and therefore says Rameir, once the first woman says my husband died, she is believed, and Rameir in this case will admit, even though in the second case of the Mishnah, where one said he got killed and one said he died, Rabbi Meir calls it a contradiction. But in the first case, where one is saying he died and one saying where he did not die, the one saying did not die, according to Rabbi Meir, has no validity at all, and therefore the other wife could indeed get married. Tanan, says the Gemara, let's ask a kasha on Rav Yochanan on the second teretz from our Mishnah. What did the next part of the Mishnah say? That if there's a machloikis now with two tsarais, two co-wives, with two singular witnesses, one said the husband died, one said the husband did not die, Ishay Meres Meis, Ishay Meres Meis. Or what happens if one woman said he died, one woman said he did not? So says the Gemara, Bishlam Meir, stomach Rav Elazar, stomach Meir. According to Rav Elazar, this case fit very well with Rav Meir. That Rav Meir will argue in this case as well. Hello, the Rav Yochanan. Kasha, according to Rav Yochanan, this fits with no one. Says the Gemara, you're right. Kasha is indeed a good question according to Rav Yochanan. So according to the Gemara, it seems Rav Elazar is the answer that stands the test of time. We continue with a new Mishnah. Says the Mishnah halfway down, now she's going on vacation together with her husband. She comes into Bezdin and she says, yes, this comes into Bezdin and she says, my husband died. What's the halacha tinase? She's allowed to get remarried. V'titel ksubasa, full-fledged, she even gets her ksuba. V'tzarasa asura. But we only believe her about herself, not about her tzara, so tzara is not able to get remarried. If the tzara, if the co-wife was a bas Yisrael, a kain, and the husband was a kain, she's allowed to continue eating truma. Divrei Reb Tarfon. So Reb Tarfon says we split up the words of this woman 50-50. For herself, she's fully believed. She gets to get remarried and she gets a ksuba. For the other co-wife, she's believed nothing. The other co-wife cannot get remarried and continues eating truma as if her husband is alive. Rabbi Kiva Omer, no, ain't zu derech maitzia medei aveira. Says Rabbi Kiva, is this a way to bring someone out from doing an aveira? Achetei asur linasei, v'asurei melech v'truma. It's not going to accomplish anything. Why? Because unless we say that she's not allowed to get remarried and she's not allowed to eat truma. So Rabbi Kiva is arguing that we need to be a little bit more firm in order to enable that they give the correct eidos. The Mishnah continues with a very similar case, and then we will explain. Amra Meiz Baili. If again a woman and husband goes overseas, woman comes back and she says, my husband dies, va'acher kach meiz chami, and then my father-in-law died. What's the difference? Because her husband had no brothers. So if her husband had no brothers, what happens when the husband dies? She marries whoever she wants. But what happens if the father-in-law, the mother-in-law is still around? What's the concern? That maybe another brother was born, and now she's not able to get remarried because she has to do yibum. So says the Mishnah, if she says my husband died and then my father-in-law died, basically saying there's no way a brother could be born, Tina say, then she's allowed to get married. But her mother-in-law is not allowed to get remarried. Says Rashi, why is her mother-in-law not allowed to get remarried? Says Rashi, because it's very similar to the case of a tzara. Because a kala, a daughter-in-law's words, do not have any credibility towards the mother-in-law. Why not? Because this is a relationship like we saw yesterday that we assume they dislike each other. Continues the Mishnah. If the mother-in-law was a bas Yisrael married to a kain, she can't get remarried. Meaning, even though the daughter-in-law is saying that the mother-in-law's husband, her father-in-law, died, still the mother-in-law is not allowed to get remarried, and she can even continue eating truma as if her husband is alive. Mamish, the same case as the first part of the Mishnah. Says Rav Kiva, then no, it's true that we're not going to believe your words 100% for the co-wife, 100% for the mother-in-law, but still, it doesn't make it 100% that she's lying, and therefore, we have to be chayshish both ways. Let's explain Rav Akiva. Rav Akiva is saying, it's true. We know tzaris hate each other. We know mother-in-law, daughter-in-law don't like each other. And therefore what? And therefore when the daughter-in-law comes in and gives edus that her father-in-law is nifter, with regard to the mother-in-law, are we allowed to believe this woman? No. So could the mother-in-law go and get remarried? The answer is no. Because the daughter-in-law's words cannot be believed 100% for the mother-in-law. But similarly for the two co-wives in the first part of the Mishnah. But the question is, do we disregard her words so much, says Rabbi Akiva, that we're even going to allow the co-wife, we're even going to allow the mother-in-law to continue eating truma as if her husband's alive? Says Rabbi Akiva, that's too far. Says Rabbi Akiva, we have to at least be chayshish. We have to at least take into account that perhaps that which the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, that which the co-wife is saying might have some validity to it. So we have to disallow the mother-in-law and the co-wife from eating truma. Says in the Gemara, the obvious question, as every time we find when we have a Mishnah is saying two dinim of the same thing, Usricha, why did the Mishnah have to say both cases? If we only said the first case of the tzara of the co-wife, I would have thought, you know why? Because co-wives really hate each other, says Rav Tarfin. You know why? Because they cause physical pain to each other. The co-wife takes the husband and takes his intimacy, and thereby makes that the other co-wife has a lower level of intimacy with her husband. So it's a physical pain that one co-wife imparts to the other. And therefore, it's a very high level. When it comes to a mother-in-law, there's no physical pain, but rather the tzera mili dalma. It's words. They don't like each other. They might talk behind each other's back, as we saw, but it's not a physical pain. So I'd have thought that maybe Rav Tarfon will say, I admit Rav Akiva, when it comes to the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, we can't believe her 100%. It's not that level of hatred. Similarly, if you listen to the second case, that's Rav Akiva says you have to be concerned about her words because there's no physical pain. In the first case, they mother the tarif that we should believe her words. Therefore, says the Gemara, Sricha, we need both cases in the Mishnah. Continues the Gemara, what's Psak Halacha? 6 lines to the bottom of Yudam Rishma Halacha, Kirebi Tarfin. Amar Abaye says, Abaye, let me bring you a raya from Nami Tanina. I learned similarly, Nitili Ben Bimdina Sayam. If a couple goes overseas and when they left, they have no children. This is going to be a mission that we're going to see very soon. They have no children. And what happens? The wife comes back and says, I had a child overseas. She continues and says, Meis bini, that child died. Va'acher kach baili, and then the husband died. So if we look at the totality of this whole story, when this woman left, was there an ibum? The answer is no. She had a husband and she had no children. When she came back, what's she saying? She's saying that she had a child, the child died, then the husband died. Meaning what? Meaning that in this scenario, now she's saying that there is Yibum. Excuse me, I said it incorrect. When she left, she was a candidate for Yibum because she had no children. We didn't know she had any children. She came back and she told us, by the way, I had a child, but that child also died. So now her chazaka of Yibum stands. Now, man, she's believed. But if she said, Baili, my husband died, and then my son died, basically she's saying that she has a patur from Yibum, and on that matters because it contradicts her chazaka. But we are concerned about her words. We have to be concerned. Maybe there's some validity to what she is saying, and therefore she needs to have chalitza from the brother. It says the Gemara from the words of this brayso. So what do we see? For herself, for her own words, we're concerned and we require her chalitza for herself. The implication is, but a different co-wife, we would not even be concerned about her words. Shema mina, says the Gemara, beautiful raya. We turn over to Kuf Yud Chesem and Beis. Says the Mishnah, another machlekes in Rav Akiva and Rav Tarfin, in which Rav Akiva is going to give the same response. Kidesh achaz mechamesh na shemeni yodeya izeh. Kidesh. Someone marries one of 5 women and he doesn't know which one he married. Kol achaz oimeres oisin kidesh. Each woman said it was me. No, he's saying get l'chol achaz v'achaz. He has to give a get to each and every woman. Umeniach ksuba beineim with stalik divid Rav Tarfin. He puts down the ksuba and he runs away. He says Rav Tarfin. What do you mean? This guy did something wrong. We're going to let him get off scot-free by paying one ksuba? Nuh-uh. Acheyitin get to ksuba l'chol achas v'achas. Says Rav Akiva, he has to give a get and a ksuba to each one of the 5 women. Myridik. Says Rav Akiva, just like in the previous case, we have to be concerned about the words. So too over here. And the Mishnah continues with a similar case. Gazal echad mechamish, if someone stole from one of 5 people, v'eni yodim meizeh gazal. Kol echad emer, so you see gazal, each one says it was me. Maniach gzela beineim, is telling, he puts something gzela and he runs. If you're Rav Tarfon, Rav Akiva, Omer. Ein zu derech mitzu dei avera again. Achi yashet kol echad v'echad, he has to pay each and every one. So says the Gemara, Kidesh Katani on the first wide line. What did the Mishnah say? Kidesh, which we know is the word meaning Erusin, meaning Kedushin, and not Baal Loy Katani. The Mishnah never spoke about a case where they slept together. Gazal Katani, Lokach Loy Katani. It said a case of Gzela. It does not say a case of Lokach, in which he's not sure which article he bought, he purchased. So money masnisa lo tankam lo shemin alazar. Says the Gemara, but the fact that Mishnah spoke of Kiddush and Gazal, it doesn't fit neither with Tanakam nor with Shemin Elazar. Titania. Rashba Imer says that Shemin Elazar no nechlu Rav Tarfon Rav Akiva al shekiddush achas v'chamesh nashim. Says Shemin Elazar. Rav Akiva and Rav Tarfon do not argue on a case of only Kiddushin, meaning there is a Kiddush. In that case, everyone agrees that he dropped the ksuba and run. So if Shimon Elazar learns clearly, not like the Mishnah, that the machlokes is only in a case where there's a biyah. Rav Tarfon Rav Akiva is to pay each and every one. So clearly the Mishnah is not like Shimon Elazar. Excuse me, Rav Akiva. I skipped over here. One more time. That was Umistalik. Rav Akiva and similarly, Rav Shimon Elazar says that Rav Tarfon and Rav Akiva do not argue al shalokach meker mechamishim nei adam. And in that case, what do they argue? So now, what we're seeing is something very difficult. Rav Shimon Elazar is saying they argue in the case of Biyah and in the case of Gezela. Our Mishnah was one of those, not both. Says the Gemara, Mitkamer Rav Shimon Elazar b'kidesh v'lokach loy pligi mechal tanakama savar argues on Rav Shimon Elazar. And what is he old pligi? So man, he tanakama lists the kidesh v'lokach. Rav Shimon Elazar lists the bal v'gazal. So our Mishnah is neither, because our Mishnah is a case of kidesh and gzela. And we see that the machlokes of tanakama and Rav Shimon Elazar is bal and gazal. Says the Gemara, loylam Rav Shimon Elazar, my kidesh. Kiddush b'biyah. What did the Mishnah mean when the Mishnah said Kiddush? It meant that they were mekadesh with biyah. Tana Kiddush odiyah koichet Rav Akiva. So why did it say the word Kiddush? To teach us the extent of the Chiddush Rav Akiva da'af al gaf. To Isura d'Rabbanan avad. Even though it's only an Isur d'Rabbanan, Kanas is a Kanas. Tani gezel odiyah koichet Rav Tarfon avad the Isura d'Araisa avad. Loi Kanas. Even though they did an Isur d'Araisa, still, there's not going to be a kanas. But when the Mishnah used the word kidesh, it meant a baal, it meant there's a tashmish, a kedushin of a biyah. We know Isha miskadesh is b'shlisha derachim, kesef shtar and biyah, but the avenue of kedushin via biyah is of course an inappropriate avenue. Rav Mangin al-madim kadosh biyah, he would give lashes, give malchus. That's the Issa D'Rabbanan, that's the chiddush of the Mishnah. We continue the final Mishnah of this incredible parak, of the second to last parak of Yevamos. Says the Mishnah, a woman goes with her husband overseas. Another permutation. Now what happens? She goes with a child. Ubasa, she returns. Va'amra, and she says, Meis baili, va'achakach meis bini. So she says, my husband died, meaning there's no yibum because I have a kid. Then she says, my son dies, there's still no yibum. Now menace, because again, she left with the chazaka of no yibum because she had a child. The status quo didn't change. Therefore, she is believed. But in the reverse case, because now she's changing her chazaka. Now she's saying that indeed there is yibum. But she's not believed, but we have to take her words into account, and therefore, she has to do chalitza. Case number 2. Nitali Bembim Dinas Ayam. We just saw this case a moment ago. If they went overseas without a child, and she comes back and she said, I had a kid overseas, my child died, because again, she left with the chazaka of Yibum. She comes back, the chazaka of Yibum, the opposite, Case number 3. A woman goes overseas without any children, and her husband had no brothers. And she comes back and she said, I was given a yavam overseas. Omra meiz vaili. And then she said, my husband died. Va'achar meiz yavami. But then that yavam, which I told you was around, died. Yavami va'achar vaili, or the reverse. Now, man, is because since we didn't know of that yavam's existence, she's believed to tell us about it and then to tell us that he is no longer. But if we know that they all went in a party, she went with her brother-in-law and her husband overseas, then she comes back, and she said, my husband died, and then my yavam died, or because in either case she went with the assumption, the chazak of Yibum, she's coming back and saying that she's not believed to say that my Yavam died that she get remarried. Nor is she believed to say that the sister died that she can marry the sister's husband's household. That my brother died to do Yibum, to marry his wife's sister. So says the Gemara, based on the Mishnah, let's ask a shayla. In the scenario that a man has a brother and he gives a get to his wife, how does he give it to her? He doesn't actually hand it to her. He's mizakin. Mizak is a way of giving over an acquisition via a third party. He gives someone else the get and says, acquire this on the behalf of my wife. In the scenario that there was a potential yavam. What's the halacha? Explains the Gemara Shaila. Do we say that we can presume that the wife hates the yavam, so it's a zchus for her to get this get so that she does not have to fall to yibum when the husband dies? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe there are times that the wife likes the yavam. So it's a chayv to take this get, because if she doesn't get the get, she could potentially do yibum. So what is the status of one could be mizak and give a wife a get through a third party when there is a yavam? Amar lei, Rav Nachman responds, Tanina. We learned in our Mishnah the Raya. What do we say in the Mishnah? That we have to be concerned about that which we said and do chalitza na'yibam. So what do we see? We see that there are obviously some women that dislike the yavam, some women that like the yavam. So in our case, we have to be chayshish for both of them, and the get would not work via the third party. Amar lei Ravina l'Rava, a similar story. What if there's a fight? Do we allow a husband now to give his wife a get through a third party? Normally, to give a get is a bad thing, but maybe if they're fighting, it's a good thing. Do we say, we know about the fight, so it's good for her? Or do we say, no, a woman prefers to be married at some level, the personal comfort of having a husband? Says the Gemara, famous Rayas, Tashema, Damrei Shlakish, a woman says it's better than be married. Two bodies always better than one. A woman always prefers marriage even if there's fights. And similarly, Abai Omar, the Shumshina Gavra, if her husband is as small, the Shumshina Gavra, yes, if her husband is as small as an ant, Kursaya Bicharta, Ramu La. Still, the woman is happy that she could sit with the free woman, she could sit with the married woman, so even if her husband's nothing, an evach, she's still happy. Rapapa Amar, Dinafsa Gavra, if a husband combs wool, a lowly profession, still, Tikri Bisife, Bavam, Vitesiv. Still, she calls to him and she sits with him. Even he has a terrible profession, she's still happy to be married. Rav Ashi Amar, similarly, the Kulsa Gavra, husband is a tainted lineage, he has no yichos. Still, tilfachi lekidra. Still, she doesn't even ask for lentils. She's so happy just to be married. Explains the Gemara, startling statement. all these different reasons we're seeing that the woman wants to be married. Tana, and it's not a good reason they want to be married. These women go in their mizana, but then at least they have something to blame it on. They can blame it on their husbands. Rahman al-Islam. We should do an incredible chazara of the second to last parach in the final few daf Mir Tashem coming tomorrow.